Okay, so my story actually started several years ago. My kids were little. They wanted bunk beds. And I thought, oh my gosh, bunk beds are the best. They save room in your room. You can like have places to put your toys. This is going to be awesome. So I got them bunk beds, and I found myself shortly after them getting the bunk beds, like going crazy. So I would ask them to make their bed, and they would complain. And so finally I got up there. I'm like, listen, it's not that hard. I'm like taking off my bracelets, climbing up the ladder, and I get up there and I'm on the bed trying to tuck the bedding, and I'm trying to tuck around those rails, and it's literally taking the skin off of my knuckles. So I was going crazy. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not lazy. It's just impossible to make a bunk bed. So I go downstairs. I'm like, all right, we've got Pinterest, like Google, somebody's got to have the hack. So I Google how to make a bunk bed, and there was nothing. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? Bunk bed bedding. Somebody has to have bunk bed bedding. So I Google bunk bed bedding. There was nothing. So I was just so frustrated. I'm like, I've got these dang bunk beds that were cute, and they're like, they make a lot of sense for their room, but I couldn't handle the room being a mess. So I knew in my mind I wanted something that would stay tucked in so I didn't have to keep tucking around the rails. So I thought if I could just get the comforter, a fitted comforter, then that would be the option. And then I thought, well, how are you going to get into that comforter? So that's when I thought, okay, let's get the zippers. So my mom is awesome at sewing. So she went with me to Hobby Lobby. And we got the longest zippers we could find, which was like this long. And so I made my own first version of Beddy's, and it was honestly a terrible version. So luckily we revised it a ton, but it was awesome because the bedding stayed in place. So my OCD brain was like, oh, their beds are clean, everything's good. But what I didn't realize is all my kids were fighting over who got to sleep in the top bunk. And I'm like, holy cow, this is like the same. They're like, Mom, but it's so much warmer. I'm like, there's no way it could be warmer. You literally have the same bedding. I made it out of the same bedding. This just has zippers. And they're like, no, because the bedding stays on us. And I'm like, oh. And so I could hear my daughter, she's like, to my boy, she's like, I'll pay you $1 if I can sleep in your bed. I'm like, why on earth? Like $1 to my kids was like millions of dollars. So I'm like, why is she offering all that money to sleep in their bed? But I realized because not only did she sleep better, but it was so much easier to do chores in the morning. So anyway, I was a full-time hairdresser. And so I told all my friends and family and clients about my frustration originally. And then I'm like, listen, I found what I'm going to do. And so I told them what I did. And they're like, Betsy, that's a really good idea. You should patent that and start selling it. And I'm like, really? Like other people would want this? So flash forward, I don't know, a few months, and I was outside jogging with my friend Angie, and she would always hear me complain, like, I don't know what it was, bedding half the time. So I'm telling her about the bedding. She's like, oh, that's a cool idea. She's like, I actually just got rid of our loft bed because it was a pain to make. So she liked the idea but didn't think twice about it. And then one day we'd gone to lunch together, and I was like, hey, should we like start this business? It would be like a fun hobby. And she's like, oh, that would be really cool. So we had no idea. So keep in mind, I'm a full-time hairdresser, and my business partner, Angie, she was actually going back to school because for psychology. So no business with her either. But we just thought it would be a fun hobby. So I had Angie on board, and we were gonna start this bedding company. So then we're like, well, we have to get like fabric somewhere. Where are we gonna get like a lot of fabric? So we started kind of trying to go around, and we actually went around the country and went back east to a fabric show. So that's how we started trying to find fabric. And then we're like trying to find manufacturing here, and it was almost impossible. The manufacturing that we did find was like $500 to make one twin bed, which wasn't gonna be a business because nobody would pay that. So we found a graphic designer who had connections with a factory in China, and we sent the designs over there. They revised. I mean, it took us probably 2 years of just prototype after prototype. We just wanted the right thing, and our goal the whole time, we like set the lowest goals. Our goal was to have bedding for our kids. That's it. So and I joke when I say this, so we can cut all that stuff up. But well, it really was our goal because it was our kids that we wanted the bedding for. So one of the samples that we got back just had the cotton liner, and I put it in my kids' room. I wanted them to try it out, and my son Boston was trying the bedding. He's like, they said they loved it, and then all of a sudden I went up there, and he has this minky blanket that he put inside the bedding, and I was like, Boston, the whole reason I got you this bedding was so that you would have a clean room. Why are you bringing this blanket up here? He's like, but Mom, it's just so cozy. So then we're like, oh my gosh, maybe we should put Minky in the Beddys because that would make more sense. We're making this for our kids. So it was a lot more expensive at the time to add the Minky liner in there, but it's what our kids loved. And flash forward, after we'd been in business, we had so many people contact us because kids with sensory processing disorder love the bedding. They love that when you zip up and you feel secure, and they love the Minky lining. So it's crazy how that started with just my son being so finicky to being something that everyone loves about our bedding. When we were trying to find manufacturing and we finally found the factory, they needed a $250,000 order. And this was supposed to be a hobby. So we didn't have $250,000. So Shark Tank was coming into town. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, Angie, all we need to do, I'll go down to Shark Tank. And she's like, I am not going down there. She's like, I'll hold up the fort here. So I went down by myself, and I honestly thought that if I went down to Shark Tank, told them I needed the money, that they'd give it to me. So I go down, I do the audition, and the guy that I met with was actually super nice. He's like, so listen, the sharks are gonna like eat you alive because you have nothing. Like, you just have the idea, you have your prototype, you haven't sold anything. And so I'm like, well, we also talked about Kickstarter. And he's like, for sure, go do a Kickstarter. So we ended up doing a Kickstarter. And the cool thing about Kickstarter is we were able to fund our first order, but we were also able to test the audience because the bedding was cool to me. Like, some of my friends and family thought it was cool, but does like the real world really want this bedding? So we're just gonna start a Kickstarter. We're gonna get our $100,000. I was gonna take $75,000 out on my home equity line, and then Angie was gonna do the same. And that's how we were coming up with our $250,000. So I remember doing Kickstarter, and I had never heard of people not funding. So again, I hadn't heard of people funding either. I hadn't really heard anything. I just thought this was a good goal. So we ended up funding $108,000 in 40 days. So we were off. And so we went and got our home equity lines, and then that's how we got our first order. And I remember sitting there during our Kickstarter, and I would just tell Angie, I'm like, as soon as Kickstarter funds, like, life will be so easy. Like, people just go onto our website, order the bedding, and that's it. We've done it. So that was just the beginning of the hardness. We funded on Kickstarter. The bedding came about 4 months later. We were able to get it out to all of the customers, but then we had to get another order, meaning we had to come up with another $250,000. And we hadn't even finished selling through our product, but we knew we needed it because of the manufacturing time. So we ended up bringing on an investor early on, and he was great. He was a friend and a neighbor, so it was a good solution for us so that we could get our second order in. So I think when people hear about this story, it sounds easier than it really is, honestly, because I couldn't afford, Beddy's wasn't paying me. I'm literally dumping all of my money into it. I was a hairdresser, so I did hair every morning. I would start at like 6 a.m. doing clients, and then I'd work till about noon. And my kids would go to school. They would leave about 8 a.m. And then my business partner, Angie, would come over at noon, and from noon to like 3, we'd try to do emails and whatever work we could do. And then I'd end up doing hair again because I had to be able to fund this business that I'm starting. So that was really hard. I remember my kids being frustrated, and they're like, Mom, why are you on your computer again? Why are you on your phone again? And there tons of mom guilt for sure. I remember I got shingles twice. Like, who gets shingles except for senior citizens and me? It was just, and I think I still have issues with the mom guilt. I want to be successful in this business, and I knew I had to keep powering through, but then I have my kids, and my thoughts are like, I only have my kids for this little period of time, and I have to work. I have to be able to pay for this business that I'm starting. And there have been some really cool things, like we've gotten really involved in social media. And that's how we've grown the business. And so in turn, my kids would see the people we'd work with, and we worked with some YouTubers, and my twins thought it was so cool. Actually, all 3 of my kids thought it was so cool So they're like, Mom, we're going to start a YouTube channel. And I laughed, you know, like, but I'm like, you know what? It's them journaling. This is fun for them. But then in turn, they've got this following, and now my kids are helping me with my business. And so it's been like a really cool, like full circle. I know my son one day was like, Mom, you didn't come on the field trips. And to be honest, field trips are like not my thing. I did it like a few times, but there was still that guilt. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but I had to work. And I'm like, but Boston, listen, you get to do YouTube and like all these cool things that you may have never done had I not started Beddy. So I try to like show them the cool things that come from the business, but it's definitely hard. And I don't want anyone to ever think that like, gosh, how is she doing it all? Because I'm like a hot mess, like 99% of the time. I have that mom guilt all the time. But there's also some like really cool things that have come out of it. Like another thing, Boston, he's like, Mom, did you know that so-and-so's mom makes their lunch every day? And I was like, oh my gosh, again, like I'm the worst mom. I don't even make your lunch. But then I'm like, isn't that cool? You know how to make your lunch. Like you're way ahead of this person, you know? So it's like, I think if you focus on just all the stress and like how much you're failing, you're going to just continue to fail. But I do try to see the positive in the trials or in these hard times. My boys were on a panel and they were being interviewed, and they said, what do you want to do when you get older? And both of my boys, they're like, I want to be an entrepreneur like my mom. So I'm like, oh, I didn't screw you up too bad. You know, it made me proud that they wanted to be like me. So I think they're seeing how much hard work goes into it, but they see how many cool opportunities come out of it. One like really cool thing, and this is, I feel like every business owner can relate to this, but you're constantly focusing on your next goal, your next project, whatever, that you don't even turn around to see like the success you've had. And I was in China and I was on the Great Wall, and I'm like looking across, and I just thought to myself, I'm like, Beddy's is what got me here. How cool is that I'm like on the Great Wall in China? Because P.S., I didn't even dare to get on an airplane before, and now I'm on an airplane to China, and I'm looking on the Great Wall. And it just made me think back. I'm like, oh my gosh, we did a Kickstarter. We got to have all these different orders, and we've brought in new products. We've invented things, like we've gotten patents on our product. That was so cool. And that was the moment in my life that I can just vividly remember thinking I was proud of myself. And that sounds so dumb, but it was like that's when I felt proud. Reviews and social media is what's grown Beddy's. And it's so cool. I remember in the beginning, people would comment on social media, who's paying $250 for bedding, you know? And then we'd have customers underneath those comments, I bought it and it's worth every dime. And they would people I didn't even know that are just commenting and supporting. And it was the coolest thing. I remember we got an email right after our first shipment went out, and this mom emailed and she said, I want you to know for 7 years I've had to hold my son tight to put him to sleep. And she's like, tonight was the first night I didn't have to do that. And it was so cool because I wanted bedding because I was kind of vain. I just wanted my kid's room to be clean, but it was helping her kids sleep. And we found so many stories like that that was like just such a cool, I don't even know, it just warms your heart to hear that you're helping people. We've created a company that helps people with disabilities, with sensory processing disorder, things that I didn't even know honestly existed until I started this company. And we've been able to even donate to the Road Home. And we have a jingle, and one of the lines in the jingle is, home is where you make your bed. And I wanted that to be in there because I think like a lot of people don't have homes. And so home is where you make your bed. So like no matter where their situation is or where they're at, they have their own home. So Betsy's advice is actually probably my mom's advice. And I remember we were leaving for our first business trip, and my mom, and this is like gonna be fun. I'm on my first business trip. Like, I'm a big girl gonna go do all these cool things. And my mom said, Betsy, I just wanna tell you, this is a really good idea. And you're gonna have a lot of ups and downs, but just remember that you're gonna finish this and stick with it. And I'm like, why is she telling me to stick with it? Like, of course I'm gonna stick with it. It's not gonna be hard. This is fun. I'm going on my first business trip. But so many times when I thought we were gonna fail or business is over, my mom's words would come through, and it's like, you're gonna have the ups and downs, but stick with it. And so I think that's my advice is, and maybe this is a good example. I remember telling Angie, I'd be like, we're gonna be millionaires. And then the next day I'm like, we're never gonna make it. We're gonna go bankrupt, you know? So it's like, you go these like high highs and these like extreme lows. Another thing I wanna say too is, someone told me, they're like, no one will ever feel the lows that you feel owning your own business, but no one will ever feel the highs that you feel. And that's so true. And it's like, all of those hard times and all those lows are worth it because of these like really cool highs that you get to experience. When I had started, if I knew the hard times I would go through, I probably would have said, oh, I'm not doing that, but I didn't know. So probably being naive to a lot of this is what's helped me. And I just keep thinking, it's just in my mind, we're just gonna continue to grow, and I'm gonna have all these cool opportunities. And I have, and it's been so fun. And if it all ended today, I would be so sad, but I am so proud of where I've come from. So listen, my advice is stick with it. You're gonna have roadblocks left and right, but there's always a way around them. And you'll figure it out because you run the business, trust your gut, and stick with it.